Nope. The man in his late 20s shook his head and fixed his reading glasses as a disappointed sigh escaped his lips. I expected better from you, Ryan. He put the papers which he was holding on the table in front of him and exhaled deeply as he lifted his gaze at the frustrated woman before him. What did you expect from me, Mr. Park? She gritted out. She could feel her anger growing, bubbling up inside her as it was the third time she was hearing the same thing. It was 8 in the evening, 2 hours past her working hours. She should be home, in her bed, reading a romance book after having a nice meal, and here she was, standing in front of her boss Park Jimin, angry and hungry at the same time. Better. These designs are good, undoubtedly, but these are not what I wanted. You are a talented designer. You have the potential to do better. It feels as if there is this is that hasn't been scratched. Ryan's face twisted with annoyance. His vague and imprecise verbiage filled her with resentment against him. She drew in a deep breath to not lose control on her mounting ire. I don't understand what exactly you want to depict in the terms of better because I have put my absolute efforts designing these neck pieces and I don't know what lacks in them because as far as I can see these are unique and the best in my eyes. She spoke, dismayed by him. I am not saying these are bad, but these are not the best version of your creativity. I want you to add these old ones and make a few more. The exhibition is around the corner and we haven't selected the designs yet. You need to be faster. Whereas Wine was fuming in anger, Jimmy stayed calm, presenting his distress about her work. No, I won't make more. This is the third time I drew these because you kept rejecting my work. I don't care if you like it or not. These are the best, and I am definitely not going to waste my time here anymore. She tried her best to get a grip on herself but failed and ended up raising her voice at the end. She turned around to leave but halted midway when he spoke. I am not keeping these outdated designs. Take them. Her jaw ticked. She fisted her hands and swiftly turned around facing him, whose face was now blank, devoid of any emotion. With huge steps, she strode towards his desk and banged her palm on the table, gripping those papers in her hands. She was already irritated, and after he named hours of her hard work outdated, she was madly furious. It took every cell of her body to not grab his hair and slam his face on the table. If my designs are outdated, then why don't you pick a pen and paper and draw some modernized, out of the world jewelries? Let me see if you are actually capable of doing something or just run your mouth to spit nonsense every now and then. This is not how we talk to our employer. He leaned against his rolling chair, amused by her sudden burst out. Of course we don't. But you are not my employer. I work for my real boss, who is your father. He was the one who appointed me on this job, and I work according to his protocols. Do not dare to boss me around. She countered and turned around to leave but stopped before looking at him once again. It's not easy to be the head jewelry designer and a secretary of an ungrateful at the same time. Of course, how would you know? Because you don't have to rush around the huge office building to get your boss his black coffee with no sugar and to waste hours designing some masterpieces only to heard these are outdated at the end. You would never know, Mr. Park, how hard is it to be me. She raised her middle finger and glared at him before exiting his cabin. He flinched when she shut the door with a thud. He looked at the closed door and shook his head as he could still hear her throwing curses at him. He pinched the bridge of his nose and removed his reading glasses. Placing them neatly on his well organized working table, he rubbed his face. Letting out an exhausted sigh, he rose from his chair and started packing his things to leave for home. Jimin came out of his cabin and approached the lobby of elevator. At the same time, Vian also reached there. Their eyes met. Vian rolled her eyes and looked away. The frown in the middle of her forehead was a clear indication of her indignation towards him. The elevator pinged open and they entered inside. Jimin stood in the center while Vian intentionally stuck to one corner, trying to be far away from him. Jimin noticed this but chose to stay silent. Thick silence hung in the air as their harsh breeze and silent hum of the elevator was the only things audible inside those four metallic walls. Everything was going okay when suddenly the elevator shook violently and stopped moving. Wyan gasped, whilst Jimin kept his hand on the nearby wall to steady himself. Jimin pressed the buttons but nothing worked. Looks like we are stuck, he murmured. Wyan rolled her eyes hearing him. How bad this day can be. Weren't office hours enough that I have to be stuck here with him now? I can't take it. She blabbered, earning a glare from Jimin. I'm not saying anything. That doesn't give you the right to speak whatever you want. You are still in office premises and I am your boss here, whether you accept it or not. You are obliged to respect me, he stated sternly. Whatever. She flicked her hair and shoved him aside, standing in front of the never ending buttons. He startled at her sudden movement and scowl took over his features. Wine pressed the emergency button. Is there anyone? I am stuck in the elevator. Please get me out. Excuse me? You are not alone. I am here as well. He gently pushed her aside and took charge of the emergency button. Park Jimin is stuck here with my secretary. Take us out. Yeah, I am stuck here with a mosquito. Take me out before I smash it between my palms. Jimin choked on air when she glared at him through her blazing eyes. She was looking scary, and now he was actually terrified by the looks she was throwing towards him. Their attention diverted to a feminine voice coming through the speaker. I am sorry for the inconvenience, Mr. Park. We are trying to fix the issue. Please wait for a few minutes. The elevator will start functioning again. They sighed in relief and stood at the two corners facing away from each other. One exhaled in tiredness. Her feet felt jelly and she slowly slid down and made herself comfortable in the corner. She kept her head against the wall and closed her eyes. Jimin glanced towards her to find her sitting down with closed eyes. He sighed and looked away, but his eyes kept moving in her direction where she was sitting without making any movements. Few minutes after, when she still didn't move even an inch, he got worried. Why? He softly called out but got no response, and only intensified his concern. He sat down beside her. Baby, again called and attentively gazed at her face for some reaction, but she kept sitting in the same position with unwavering expressions. Baby, open your eyes. I'm so sorry. I made you work so hard today and I was mean to you earlier. I'm really sorry, sweetheart. Open your eyes. I'm getting worried now. He wrapped his arms around her tightly and blabbered, not knowing she was awake and looking at him weirdly. She pushed him off her body. He looked at her and relief washed over him seeing her awake. Thank God you are awake. I was so scared. I thought you fainted. He again pulled her in his arms. Get off me. She pushed him away, glaring at him. Baby, I'm so sorry. He smiled slightly, trying to melt her anger, but she remained unaffected by his charm. Won't you forgive your husband? Vance coughed and smiled at him sarcastically. Husband? I don't remember I have a husband. I only have a self-obsessed, rude boss who was very mean to me earlier. She slapped his hands away, which reached out to hold her, and glared at him profusely. Babe, no, don't babe me now and don't touch me. She moved away from him and stood up as the elevator also started moving whilst he gazed at her with his innocent doe eyes. Babe, listen to me. He followed Wyan, who stomped inside the living room with heavy steps like a lost puppy. During the ride home, he tried to pacify her, coax her with sweet talks, but she didn't budge. She was really mad at him. Wine abruptly stopped when her eyes fell on her in laws who were dancing in the living area. They were so lost in each other to notice the commotion around them. Ew, Dad, not here, please. Of course, he had to interrupt their sweet moment with his remark, which didn't fit well with Wine, and she pinched his thighs, making him wince. You. Don't forget you exist because of this you. In our language, it's called romance, and romance is the key of successful relationship. He spoke, wrapping his arms around Jimin's mother's shoulder. Wine glared at Jimin. Learn something from your parents, unromantic brat. She snapped and advanced towards her father-in-law. Dad, see these designs. How are these? She pulled out the papers from her bag and handed to him. His sharp eyes scanned those designs keenly. These are really amazing. He praised her with a sly smile. A wide grin bloomed on Wine's lips. Really, Dad? But he called them outdated. Wine accusingly pointed at Jimin. Jimin closed his eyes, knowing what was coming next. Outdated? You called my daughter's hard work outdated? You are 4 years older than her. You are outdated for her, old ungrateful brat. She glared at him and kissed Wine's head, who smirked at Jimin. Don't be sad, sweetie. I prepared your favorite dinner. Go and get freshened up. I'll serve the dinner. Wine smiled and nodded whilst Jimin's mother left for kitchen. Wine, these designs are good, but you can add something more. Look, you can add big pearls instead of small one in this piece. It will enhance its beauty even more. And see, in this one, you can add some diamonds in between. It will look more elegant. He politely gave some suggestions, which Wine heard attentively. I got it, Dad. I know what I have to do. I'll make alterations in all of them. She chirped happily and hopped towards her room, leaving behind a stunned Jimin. He moved towards his father and gaped at him with wide eyes. How do you do this, father? When I said the same thing to her, she burst out on me. But when you said it, she happily accepted it. How? He probed, perplexed. His father wrapped his arm around his shoulder. Your way of speaking, dude. Look, there are different ways to say how you feel. There was your way, which made her upset, and there is my way, where I said what I wanted to and didn't let her feel bad. Understand something? He softly squeezed Gemma's shoulder. How are you so good with communicating with others? How can I be better? These type of things come with experience, my boy. You will learn it slowly with time, how to keep your wife happy and be happy afterwards. He chuckled and made his way towards the kitchen to help his wife. Jimin entered inside his room after having some business talks with his father after dinner and found Wine standing in the middle of the room with her arms crossed across her chest. Get out. She spat when he took a step towards her. What? He asked again, thinking he heard something wrong. Out of the room now. Go and sleep on the couch. Are you kicking me out? Exactly. Now move you out of the room. Are you still angry? Come on, baby. I said sorry. I heard it, but I decided to ignore. That means I'm still upset with you and I don't want you beside me tonight. Babe, all his protests died down when Wyan forcefully pushed him out of the room and closed the door. Babe, listen to me. I'm sorry. You know I can't sleep without cuddling you. Please open the door, my sweet and amazing wife. He banged on the door, murmuring some sweet words which never reached Wyan because she was already asleep under the warm covers. Sighing in defeat, Jimin came inside the living room and found his father already taking space on the sofa cum bed. What are you doing here? He asked as soon as he noticed him. Wyan kicked me out, but what are you doing here? He said, taking a seat beside him. I kinda got kicked out too, he said. Both father and son stared at each other before bursting into laughter. My situation is understandable, but what did you do to end up here? Miscommunication. Your mother said, how is it amazing to see your child growing and well settled with a beautiful wife? It is an amazing experience to grow old, and I nodded, agreeing with her. And that was my biggest mistake. The next second, she glared at me, saying that I agree she is getting old, and here I am. He exhaled, completing his explanation, and Jimin was literally in tears by laughing so much. Earlier, you were bragging about romance and communication and all. What happened to your experience? He teased, laughing at his father's miserable state. I guess I am still in learning phase, he exclaimed, and Jimmy nodded, having a hard time in stifling his laughter. Guess we are sharing the bed tonight. Jimmy lay down, keeping his head on his father's chest, and hugged him. I miss sleeping like this. Dad, tell me a story like you used to in my childhood. Jimin, you are a grown man and you are asking for a story seriously? So what? Ain't I your son anymore? I'll be your little boy forever and tell me a bedtime story. Maybe that will help me in sleeping besides my wife's cuddles. A smile appeared on his father's face as nostalgia hit him. With a big smile on his face, he proceeded to tell him a story. They enjoyed their time reminiscing about the old times and eventually fell asleep. Little did they know the ladies had sneaked in one room to have a girls' night.